Hello there, woman beings, and welcome to another episode of Woman Being Podcast. I'm here today with the inimitable Kelly and the insurpassable Kelly Ann. I am Emma, and I will be your host for this episode. And today we are going to talk about LulaRich, aka a very popular buttery soft legging brand that is also an MLM that is also the subject of Amazon's latest docuseries, LulaRich. If you haven't heard of it, what the heck have you been doing? Are you living under a rock? I don't know. This is the new Tiger King, people. This is what we are watching in our hot girl quarantine right now. So let's dive right in. This is Woman Being,
where we explore thoughts and opinions
and have the freedom to change our minds.
Without expectation or judgment,
we will hold a safe space and support each other
as we navigate together in the form of feminine.
Why are we talking about LulaRich? Well, I'll tell you why, ladies. It's because one of our lovely, lovely followers suggested that we watch this docuseries, and that's something that you guys, the woman beings, can actually get in on as well. If you're sleeping on our social media, then
why?
That is sleep not worth having. Because you should be following us on Instagram, because that's where we ask for ideas for episodes and input, and that's where we get to talk to you and be in conversation with you. So, we're very thankful that someone turned us on to LulaRich, and we are stoked to talk about this because this is something that definitely affects women a lot. And
it's pretty much 100% like targeted at women, I would say.
Yeah, this one specifically. So to just give a brief overview of what this docuseries is. It's a 4-part docuseries. It's on Amazon. It's about the brand LulaRich, which is a MLM or multi-level marketing company. Mm-hmm. Which is essentially a pyramid scheme. But there's a difference between a pyramid scheme and an MLM, I will say. MLMs are legal. Pyramid schemes are not. MLMs focus on providing a good, and pyramid schemes focus on signing up new people, essentially. Those are the differences. But this company, they sell leggings. They also sell skirts and other articles of clothing with very bold patterns on them. If you've seen them, if you know of them, then you would recognize them instantly. They're very recognizable. And this docuseries is sort of exposing them. It covers a lot of different things, but it talks about sort of how they got started as a company. It interviews the founders, which is a husband and wife, Mormon couple who live in California, and talks about how they started, and then talks about how different women got involved in the very beginning, talks about the wild amounts of success and growth that they had initially, and then dives into topics like lawsuits that they've had, product quality control issues that they've had, talks about ways that they have had contradictory messaging around women and empowerment, ways that they have like touted sort of quote unquote family values messaging, and all sorts of things, and like gaslit all of their employees in so many ways. It also like briefly touches on the fact that like 2 of the founders' children are married to one another, but they were like adopted, so it's fine. But it's also weird and feels icky.
Woody Allen married his daughter, but she was adopted, so that's technically fine, right?
Yeah. Very meh. But it touches on that. It touches on, so much. But that's sort of the broad. Is there anything that I'm missing here, ladies?
Yeah, you pretty much covered it.
Yeah. Okay, episode over. The end.
That is...
Bye.
LulaRich, thank you.
Thanks for watching
LulaRich,
this episode of the Woman Being Podcast.
No, okay. So that's sort of the the broad dip your
Synopsis.
toes in. These are some of the things it touches on. It is pretty varied across the board. And I feel like sort of leaves you with not... I mean, you can tell there is a bias in this docuseries from the people that created it. But I think that there was a good amount of fairness in sort of just presenting things. They do show footage of like the founders and some of the higher ups that are also their children in a deposition for a lawsuit that they had with the state of Washington, but also shows their actual interview that they did with them and shows them in a positive light sometimes. And also interviews at least one woman who's still involved in the company and is still a retailer for them, but then also interviews people who have chosen to leave and have been...
Or have been
forcibly removed.
Asked.
Yeah.
Well, not forcibly, but like
Let go.
terminated.
So all that to say, what were you guys' impressions of LulaRich as a company, like before this? And then I guess like, what are your impressions now after watching the docuseries?
Yeah, I mean, my impression of LulaRich has kind of grown over the past several years. I remember like in college sitting by a friend and being like, oh my gosh, your leggings are so soft. Where'd you get those? And she
As
was
you
like,
casually touched your friend's leg.
no, I think it was like, she's like, please touch my
Please
legs.
touch
They're so
this.
soft, you know? And we're like,
Yeah.
wow, look at those leggings. They're so nice, you know? And so to me, my first understanding of it was this like cool new brand that had popped up and had these cool leggings with cool prints. And hers were not weird printed. I remember they were just like kind of plain colored. But anyways, so that was sort of like, oh, a cool leggings brand. And then I think probably in the last couple years or whatever, I realized that they had like, or I had been under the impression that they had gone under. There was something that seriously went wrong. I noticed a lot of their clothes in the thrift stores and just was, I don't know where I heard this, but just was of the understanding that they were no longer a good brand. And I actually thought they were like not even still in operation, but they are. So that's surprising to me after watching LulaRich.
Yeah.
Because in the documentary, you sort of discover a very fascinating look into humans and psychology and manipulation and cult-like tendencies that this sort of business can carry. And yeah, I think to me, it seems like it started out as something with good intentions and good ideas and money and fame and, I don't know, humanness, like got real weird.
Yeah, I don't know that I was super familiar with LulaRich.
It's a hard name to
It
say.
is really hard. It's like you're trying to be French, but you're not. I was not super familiar. I feel like I've probably seen their leggings from, like, back home. Like, this is definitely the kind of thing that, you know, ladies from Oklahoma would definitely get into. But yeah, I actually had no real awareness of the brand or company. Other than I'm a big thrifter. I love to thrift. I recognized the label as soon as the documentary started. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen a lot of their dresses, some of their skirts. Like, it's just, but overall, like, it's not the kind of garment item I would be drawn to at all. And so, yeah, it was a interesting, enlightening experience to watch this documentary. I mean, I'm in a retail manufacturing product development role. So this is essentially my job. This is my field that I'm in. And so it's interesting to see how they choose to go about business. It's clearly a very homegrown, don't really know what they're doing way of doing business. And yeah, it's interesting because they're like empowering women, but kind of not empowering women and like going after women, but also like further along going after the whole like spousal dynamic. I don't know. It was just like a lot at once.
Well, it got weird too when like body image and like body weight sort of controlling type things come into play. This is one thing we missed, I think, in the synopsis, is that there's a point at which the founder of the company, or president, I guess you could say, her name is Deanne. She gets like a gastric bypass surgery or some
A
sort of
sleeve.
some sort of like stomach tightening surgery, and it helps her to lose a bunch of weight. And she has this doctor down in Tijuana and starts like encouraging all of her like higher ups to also get the same surgery and send them down to Mexico for it. And that there's like a lot of pressure to be thin and beautiful and like
and to image in general.
Yeah, like to maintain a certain image.
Have
so
your
that
hair done, have your nails done.
Right.
Look professional.
Right.
Drive a nice car.
If people are going to be recruited into the company, they need to look at you and see the success that you've attained and want to join. To the point that one woman was saying that she was living paycheck to paycheck despite making
six
like
figures.
Like $10,000 to $30,000 to $50,000 a month.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Which is super crazy.
I don't know. Part of me, though, has a lot of empathy for the founder, shockingly, because I see all the damage that they've done to their employees. Frankly, it's a super unsustainable business model for, one, their employees, but two, like, the planet, like the way they're pumping out poor quality clothing all day, every day. But part of me really felt empathy for this president of this company, oddly.
What did you feel empathetic about?
You get a little bit of backstory. She clearly has had a lot of patriarchal messaging instilled in her from her mother. Her mother wrote a book about being the
Submissive,
ideal wife, like submissive, beautiful, all this stuff. And what I took away from this is that she was super driven and business-minded and a go-getter. And she wanted to make money for her family. She wanted to be successful for her family and for herself. But she didn't necessarily know how to do that without being this submissive, supporting patriarchy figure. And so she's essentially, what I took away from it was that she essentially is trying to live out her own expectations while imposing those expectations on others. And as those other women rise up, become financially successful, beautiful, thin, whatever, in her eyes, it's a confirmation that she can do it too. That's what I took away. But at the same time, obviously there's a lot of lack of recognition of what is happening. It's clear to me that she's not like fully accepting of the reality that she's created and that the role that her husband has played in that as well. It's kind of interesting seeing them interviewed. Every time he talks, she looks really uncomfortable and like she gets fidgety and like she's not, she looks funny for some reason anytime he talks.
And in her deposition, like you see little moments from that, she seems like not in her mind. You know, like she doesn't seem like an intelligent, like emotionally stable or mentally stable person to me. She just seems like kind of in shock and unsure how to respond and says, I don't know a lot. And I don't know. Maybe she's just terrible at lying and that's what it looks like. But yeah, to me, it does seem like there's a little bit of like, are you a victim in this too? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. I mean, in some sense, there's no way that we can know, right? But also, this makes me think of the conversation that we have in our episode reviewing the book Pure, which comes out in a couple weeks. So here, this is a little taste for you guys about like people's intent. And I sure can see like she is obviously was raised in a very religious environment, in a very like an environment that touted women being submissive, but also growing up in the capitalist, like success-driven United States, at the same time wants to pursue like financial and like corporate success, and sees sort of like you creating this business with her husband as a way to bypass that sort of submissive wife message that she's been given, and to still work within those bounds, you know. But also at the same time, at this point, they've had 20 plus lawsuits filed against them.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that they said that like she and her husband would say in conferences for LulaRich or even in the interview they did with them that directly contradict things they say in their deposition because and to me, that communicates someone that knows they were doing something wrong.
Sure.
And they're doing what their lawyer has told them to say in the deposition, which is no comment or I don't know or whatever, in order to cover their butts because they've been breaking the law, you know? And so to me, it's like you've been given so many opportunities to recognize that you were doing something that was wrong and harmful, and you're still sticking to your guns. And so to me, that takes away an opportunity for empathy for me, because sure, like maybe she's totally brainwashed, maybe she's totally like has no understanding of what she's doing or whatever. But like I just can't walk around like just giving her that excuse, you know?
Right, like we can't give every criminal the excuse of you didn't realize what you were doing. You know, there has to be some level of like you had. I mean, she's essentially touting this female empowerment message, while also, like, kind of essentially ignoring the statistics of the number of people who are actually successful in the business.
Yep.
And anyone who's not successful, she's giving them messages of, well, honestly, like, if you really want this, you are going to work hard for it.
Yeah,
And,
you obviously just don't want it enough.
right, and, like, whining and complaining, like, aren't our business model, and let's get rid of the negativity. And it's like... If for people who see negativity as like only negativity, I feel like that gets really dangerous.
Yeah.
Because negativity is actually like a part of what makes us human. It's a part of what makes us better, you know? And to just deny it instead of acknowledging it and like trying to fix problems. Like it's not like she never got to hear complaints, you know? Like it's not like no one told her that things weren't well and good in the company. So, I agree. You look at her and you're like...
Something's off.
Something's very off with her, for sure.
But I mean, I think her husband as well seems very calculating to me. And he seems a bit more straightforward with that. She seems a little bit more two-faced to me. Totally. While he feels actually more... upfront across the board in the way that he talks. He's just more consistent and like more upfront and being an asshole.
Either he's more successfully deluded himself into believing that he's done nothing wrong, or he's much more efficient at manipulating others to say something that sounds good.
Yeah, but one thing I will say, you mentioned, so like, I feel like there's so many different paths with this. So in talking about them doing things that are like criminally wrong, like the reason they're in a deposition and that kind of thing, like that's the pyramid scheme stuff. That is the fact that their company that should be a multi-level marketing company has actually turned into something that incentivizes and rewards people for signing other people up to the company. And that is illegal. That is an illegal business plan. But some of the other things that they do that we're also like hinting at are the like female empowerment message that is actually like contradictory, or things like having product issues, giving a bad product and essentially taking people's money from them and not allowing people to return that product and things like that. But one thing that I will say that you mentioned, Kelly, is that like knowing that or her willfully ignoring the fact that like people are not able to be as financially successful in this business model as you're claiming that they can be. One of the statistics that really sort of like blew my mind when I saw it in the docuseries is that I think it's the 0.01% of people in the company make like $1.5 million a year. in being part of this MLM. And then 70% made zero, right? Like that's a very hefty statistic, and to me feels in line with other MLMs that I have heard about or know of. In my mind, joining an MLM, especially one that has been around for a long time, there's not really much opportunity to actually make money because you are at the bottom of the pyramid or at the bottom of the pipeline, whatever you want to call it, because an MLM wouldn't like for you to call it a pyramid, because then you're calling it a pyramid scheme.
But essentially, if you don't have people under you and then people under them, you're not making money.
Yeah, exactly. So in talking about MLMs as well, just in general, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about you guys' thoughts on those as a business model, and like maybe what your impression of MLMs is.
Yeah, I think I did not fully understand what an MLM was until, how old am I? Maybe 5 years ago. So rather recently in my life. I was actually, someone tried to recruit me for an MLM, a makeup division of a very large MLM. And I actually went over to this person's house to test out product, because if it's good product, I'll sell it. Essentially was my mindset, but I was very young. Keep in mind, I was like 19 years old. I was so young, and actually looking back on this, I'm like, oh wow, these people were like mid-30s. Like they should not be like approaching a 19-year-old girl who's starry-eyed and like doesn't know what she's doing in life. But the makeup was shit. And I was like, yeah, this is not great. And they were actually very upset that I would say that it was not good quality.
Oh, you told them?
Yeah, I was like, this foundation is terrible. I love makeup. I really, really do. I have from a very young age, even though I don't wear a ton of it. And so quality is important to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'd basically just be lying and trying to make people buy stuff that I wouldn't even wear myself. And so I stood by that and was like, yeah, no thanks. And then I slowly, as I, emerged into the retail business world, started to really understand what is insidious about an MLM. And it is that you do have to pay money up front, and they sell you this idea that you own your own business, but really you're reliant on a wholesaler, quote unquote wholesaler. And it's really not your business. You are doing business on behalf of someone else, and they're lying to you, telling you that that it is your company, that it's your business, and you will get out of it as much work as you put into it, which is simply not true. If you want to be a business owner, you need to figure out what business you want it to be and what goods you want to sell, and not, or what service you want to provide, and not solely doing something on behalf of someone else, which is totally fine if you want to do it, but definitely not in a pyramid scheme fashion.
Yeah, no, I'll add on to what you said and then go back to your question, Emma. But what was interesting is that at least in the first episode, or the first 2 episodes, LulaRich looks really enticing. And you understand why, like, women are, like, on waiting lists to get onto this business role so that they can become a retailer for LulaRich. Because it's like, you buy the product at wholesale price, you sell it at retail price, you keep all of the product. All of the profits.
Yeah.
And when there's, and there was a huge kind of like trend or like surge of people wanting to buy LulaRich products at the time. And so
yeah, I feel like I couldn't go on Facebook without seeing LulaRich. Like there were so many Facebook pages for LulaRich. People would invite me to the pages.
But it sounds enticing because it seems like, oh, I just buy a bunch of product, set up a little store in my home, do some pop-ups around the neighborhood, and I can like take care of my family and make a bunch of money on the side. And then when you add in like, oh, and then the more people I recruit, the more money I make, like it seemed really enticing. And for the people at the beginning, it was, because they did make a lot of money. But then you kind of see the progression of the company and how once you saturate that market and you have like they get up to like 60 or 80,000 retailers, like different people actually selling the products, those people at the bottom have no chance of recruiting more people because there's already like way too many people in a certain
only so
area
many
selling
people
the
are going to
products.
buy ugly printed leggings.
Right. Yeah, like they're only going to be trendy for so long, and like you can't, if there's like 6 retailers in your town, like nobody's going to be making money. So anyways, I just want to clarify, like it does feel enticing. And I think that's why a lot of MLMs are successful, is because they sell you on this idea that like, hey, you buy your own inventory.
Yeah.
You manage your own schedule. You sell your product as you want to. And that feels like a good deal. It feels like, oh, I could do that. And for something that's flying off the shelf anyways, why wouldn't I? But anyways, I'll circle back to answer your question. I personally have actually come to the conclusion that I don't ethically agree with MLMs. I actually had someone reach out to me in the past year and wanted to like invite me to an online party for a makeup brand. And I said, hey, like, I want to support you in any way I can, but I actually don't do this kind of stuff. I just think it's ethically wrong. Like, I think it's a mistreatment of human beings, like the whole business model. And usually I'm not super impressed with the products either. But I mean, I have a long history. Like, my mom has done several different MLM like businesses throughout my life. Like, there was a while where she sold Nikken magnets, and she sold Jamberry fingernails, and she's done like all sorts of different things. And so like I understand, and I've had several friends who have done it too. So like I understand the appeal, and I understand like it's fun. Like, oh, we're going to have a makeup party. We're all going to get together and buy makeup. So I get that. But I think I've seen too many people like end up in a cycle of purchasing all this product and realizing it's not actually that good quality, and then like kind of falling off the wagon. So I haven't seen lots of long-term MLM people who stay in the business for a long time. So for that, I just don't think it seems sustainable for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like my impression of MLMs has always sort of been like that they are ultimately not lucrative, just because I've never personally seen someone be very successful with them. I have known one person who was fairly successful with an essential oils MLM, but also still had another job on top of that, you know? And so it's like, well, I've seen it like, oh, this might be a nice way to make some side money if you can, but it's not really like this is going to be your business, or like this is going to change your life, you know?
Right.
Or like, I feel like I've had not a ton of exposure to MLMs, really only like a couple of makeup ones and essential oil ones, and that's it. And I think of like the Mary Kay pink cars, you know, like that's like the iconic thing of like this person has made it as a Mary Kay consultant. And and in my mind, I thought about joining an MLM when I first came back to the United States from being a missionary for a year. I was like, I just need some money. Maybe I should do this. I know some people who do this. And then I just never did, because that seemed like I didn't want to bother my friends with it and like bother people to buy this thing from me, you know? But I think that, and I also feel like in my mind, MLMs are going sort of out of style. I don't know if this is my own personal impression, but to me, I've never felt a huge need to purchase something from an MLM just as a consumer, because I can find whatever I want anywhere else. You know, like it was never like, oh, I must buy this from this brand that's an MLM. I've never been like loyal to a brand that is an MLM in that way. And so, whereas I know some people are like, I only buy my makeup from Beauty Counter or whatever, or I only buy my essential oils from Young Living. But I've never felt that compulsion. To me, it's like I can find something just as good online or in a store.
Yeah, that's another thing for me is like as a receiver, and I've like, I set up like an online store with my mom one time when she was selling something. I forget what it was. But I have never personally felt good about like asking my friends to like buy stuff that they don't need or want. You know, like I'm not a salesperson, so I will just admit that from the beginning. Like, that's not my jam. I hate feeling like I'm persuading people to, like, do something they don't want to do. And I also hate feeling obligated to purchase something from somebody just because they need it to, like, feed their family. And, like, you know, like, it feels like that. It feels like, oh, like, this is, you know, how I'm getting groceries for my family, and like, will you please support my business, and blah blah blah. And that to me like just feels like, I don't know, it feels slimy or dirty or I don't know. And like, I'd rather give you the money than purchase whatever crap product this is. Like, I don't know, maybe I have pretty strong feelings, but I've just always like somebody reaching out to you on Facebook that you haven't talked to in 7 years and being like, hey, I wondered if you'd be interested. It just like gives me anxiety. It's like not, it's not a good thing. It doesn't feel like a good relational technique to like make friends and maintain friendships.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, right? Like in a typical retail setting, your customer is walking in the door for a reason. It might be to browse, it might be to shop, but it is up to you as the salesperson to figure that out and to serve them genuinely. And I think that's the problem with commission-based selling, is because now you are my paycheck goal versus, hey, I'm actually here to serve you and support you on your journey, whatever that looks like. So for most MLMs, you are reaching out to your family members, your community, people you do life with. The hard thing about that is those people aren't already into whatever it is that they might be into or interested in walking into a retail setting. So, like, I worked at Victoria's Secret for several years. I know every woman needs bras and panties. Easy. You could be walking in to look, and that's okay. But also, like, I'm here to help you on that, like, on that process.
Right.
It's not the same with essential oils or with, you know, Beauty Counter, or, like, not everyone is into that. So, in a way, you are already, like, causing friction because you don't have a space that people are willingly walking into. And I think that's what makes it weird.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, like, when it comes to my friends who have businesses, like, I like to shop at their businesses. Like, you know, I like to go to their stores, order things from them, like, receive, you know, hair, makeup services or, you know, waxing services from them, right? Like, I'm all about, like, supporting friends and their businesses. But to me, I just have such a hard time, like, equating an MLM to something that can actually make them successful and something that, like, is a product I can believe in enough to either want to make the purchase or want to become a seller of.
Right.
And I don't know.
And I think I feel really harshly when it's like, oh, this is how I'm buying my groceries. It's like, no, it's not. If you really need groceries, you need to go get a real job. Like, sorry, like, I know you want to be at home with your kids. There are things you can do. You can be an online assistant. You can, you know, clean houses on the weekends. There are a lot of things, and I understand not everyone has the same amount of access or privilege. But I'm like, sorry, like, this is not a guaranteed hourly pay.
Right. It's like we're all kind of in the same boat. We're all trying to, like, you know, make money and support our families and stuff. I don't know. And I feel horrible. Like, I really actually hate MLMs. I'm just going to actually, like, I'm not being nice, but I just don't like them. I think they're horrible. And I say that knowing people off the top of my mind who support their families with MLMs and enjoy doing MLMs and stuff. And I'm happy for them if they are happy, but, like, to me, like, the idea of manipulating is maybe a strong word, but, like, I don't know, like, invading my friends on social media with, like, with that just makes me cringe. Not a fan. Hard. Not a fan.
But also, like, you do you.
But also you do you, but
live
also
your
I
truth.
hate it.
Just don't bring it my direction.
Well, you can bring it in my direction. I'm just going to say respectfully no.
Like,
and ask how I can support you in other ways.
If I want to buy Young Living, I can go find 1 million people that sell it.
But so I'm curious about Young Living because I'm like, my understanding of Young Living is that you don't necessarily have to have any sort of buy-in at the front to be able to order products from them. Is that correct?
No. Technically, I am a Young Living quote-unquote person. I actually did it because of like some hormones class I was taking, and you were required to have some certain essential oils. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do Young Living. And I signed up, and you have like a minimum purchase amount. It's like $20, which is like 2 oils. And so, yeah, I get a discounted like rate, but I'm not trying to sign people up. I'm not telling people that I have it. I mean, I am now, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to actually take.
Everyone buy Young Living from Kellyanne.
Please don't. If you
like,
message me and are like, I want to buy Young Living from you, I'm going to be like, don't. Like, go sign up for yourself. I don't have time to take your damn orders. Like, what do you think I do all day? I'm busy.
Sure.
So, like.
But yeah, to me, Young
But
Living
that's different.
does not feel like the same as other MLMs.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't actually know like what the difference is or if it's.
Me either.
Yeah. Because to me,
I just wanted
if I
oils.
can go online and buy it for myself without having to be like become an actual like seller of products, I feel like that is acceptable to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to like coerce my friends into like buying it through me or vice versa.
Yeah.
Like I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. To go back to what I was saying, I don't know if you guys have the same like feeling around it, but to me it feels just sort of like an outdated system.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like
very old.
It feels like this is something that worked when women were having like gatherings because they were like house
Tupperware
moms
parties.
and having Tupperware parties or silverware parties or whatever, and they would buy things and have tea or whatever. Like that's like my impression is like women with like knee-length dresses who are have an apron on and they're like selling this on the side.
Yeah.
But in my mind, like especially people within like our generation and below, it's not as much of a like popular thing outside of for some reason essential oils, which I feel like our generation is obsessed with.
Yeah, we've like accepted essential oils. Like we're like, okay, that's fine, but nothing else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no other MLMs are
100%.
allowed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't ever get messages from people like knocking on my door to sell essential oils. Like I feel like people who want essential oils buy them, and people who don't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've gotten messages about essential oils.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair.
I agree with you, though. It is very outdated. It's an old business model. It's a business model that was created, like, when women were stay-at-home moms, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
And they wanted something to do, and also, like, the prices, cost of living in general was going up. And so it was like, 1, I want to feel like I have some power. 2, I want something to do. 3, I'm going to help out my family while I'm doing it. Versus now, I mean, I really loved what the journalist that was interviewed for this doc said. And it was like, she said something along the lines of, we have the most educated generation of women yet. A lot of them are staying at home. A lot of them still want to feel like they are doing something to support their family, but they still want to be with their kids. And I think that is a really big struggle that a lot of women struggle with today. I mean, I work with some moms that work part-time and they love working, but it also kills them to be away from their kids. Also, when you're paying a nanny, you're making like half of your salary, maybe, if you're lucky. And that it's just not like our generation has a different, unique struggle.
Yeah, and it feels like, especially in this doc, like the business model definitely took advantage of that when it comes to, hey, lady with a family and a husband who's working all day, like you can make extra money too,
Yeah.
And they kind of touted these like rags to riches stories where women would be like, well, we were struggling going from paycheck to paycheck. We were in debt. I didn't have any way to like pay for extra school supplies for my kids or whatever. Like I didn't know where our next paycheck was coming from. We were racking up credit card, like whatever the story was, like to now, like I make $10,000 a month and my husband doesn't have to work anymore and our family is taken care of and I can do it all in the comfort of my home and I, control my own hours or whatever. But they don't like mention, and they briefly discuss this as like those women who are making 6 figures a year or more are hustling so hard that they're actually not doing what they originally intended,
No.
which was to like work part-time and make full-time salary. They're actually working full-time and more, and their husbands are having to like
help them
out.
And they're having to hire a nanny and a cook and a maid.
To like be able to like sustain the lifestyle. And so it's they kind of like prey on those needs that women have and then like essentially deceive them into believing that if they hustle hard enough, they're going to reach the level of success that's going to allow them to like make the money and have the family like success that they want.
Yeah. So then going off of that, I'm curious to hear more about what you guys thought about their messaging towards women in the docuseries. Like, they are obviously targeting women. It's a women's clothing brand. They're saying to women, hey, you can do this. You can do this part-time, get full-time salary. You can have this as a way to work from home to help out your husband. But then it sort of takes an insidious turn in the docuseries where they start to realize, like, they're touting this message of empowering women, but then once your business gets to a certain size, they want you to hand it off to your husband. And they say, well, your husband should be involved in this, and your husband actually needs to take over because you are serving him with this business.
Yeah, it was like, the goal is to retire your husband.
Yeah.
But it's not, because you're retiring him by giving him this business
job.
instead of whatever he was doing.
Yeah.
Okay, honestly, a lot of the messaging that comes through was very reminiscent to me of the messaging that we receive in the church, which is that we are powerful, we are strong, we are amazing, we have all of these attributes that God has given us that, you know, we can do anything we want. But actually, like, when the rubber hits the road and success, like, is in the picture and, like, it's about actually achieving those aspirations, it's suddenly like, oh, well, your husband has to actually be there.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, completely denies anyone who's not married or not hetero. And second of all, like, it's sort of like this false promise of empowerment and, I don't know.
Like freedom?
Freedom, yeah. And, you know, like, yes, self-autonomy, that sort of thing. It's this false promise that actually truly means rising to success so that you can better serve your husband so that he can still be the head of the household kind of thing. Or your pastor or whatever. Like, in the church, it would be more like that. And so to me, I guess I'm not surprised that it landed that way, especially knowing the leaders of the company, the founders, were like not Christians, but religious in their Mormon faith, which has a lot of similar familial values to Christianity in a lot of spaces. Yeah, that's how it felt to me. It felt very much like the false narrative I've been fed my whole life, that I can be whatever I want and do whatever I want and get the education I want. But when it actually comes to like my role in society and as a human being, it's actually not everything it was touted to be.
Yeah. It makes me think of the messaging that you've talked about receiving when you were part of a missions organization, which was, well, when is your husband going to join?
Yes.
It was the idea that, well, surely he's going to come alongside you in this and be in the ministry.
Because you can't be successful unless you're doing it as a unit. You know, like everyone knows that. You know, it's like, well, is that true? I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think that is true.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of like social barriers that you kind of have to break down internally and externally in order to be able to function as separate beings who are like united in marriage and not like one big orb like just merged into another one. I don't know.
One body with two heads or
Yeah,
something.
or just like literally just like denying myself and becoming whatever my husband wants me to be, you know, like, I mean, and that was a lesson I had to learn again internally and have also had to like push against externally. So there's multiple factors that play there. But yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super fair. I also felt like it was echoing messages from the church. But also it really bothered me the way it essentially, and this is, I also think bothers me from just church in general, very conservative messaging is like, well, please your husband so you can get your way. Get down on your knees for 5 minutes, essentially saying, give your husband a blowy. You don't even need to, open your legs. Make him happy. Subdue him. So then you can go about doing what you want, spending the money you want, and living life the way you want. And I'm like, wow, that is so dysfunctional and so unhealthy. And if I am married to someone that I just want to keep happy so I can live my life, like, that is not a marriage that is serving me or that is serving the other person. And I think it paints women in this light of like,
Jezebel,
the seductress, the Eve that ate the apple and then, deceived Adam. It's just like, oh my God, if anyone talks anymore about women being deceitful, I am going to do something extreme. I don't know what yet, but I'm going to do it. And yeah, so I think that is upsetting to me that messaging is prevalent in society in general. But specifically here, it's like to be a powerful businesswoman, to be a boss babe, to, work part-time hours for a full-time salary or whatever, just keep your husband happy. And then you can do what you want.
Yeah.
And it's just like, ew.
Flash those titties and get down on your knees and he's going to let you do whatever you want.
To clarify, this is something that one of the former retailers for LulaRich said that the founder said at a conference was to literally spend 5 minutes on your knees and he'll let you spend whatever money you want.
Right.
And the woman who talks about this, she's like, that seemed pretty unprofessional to me to say at a work conference.
Right. And so there's that, but then there's also the woman that was really struggling in her marriage and she opened up to her about it and she was like, well, you just need a new husband.
This is what the founder said.
The founder. And I'm just like, wow, like there's no empathy and no like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I think that was overall what bothered me. There was no human feelings associated to being a woman. It was just package it up, present it well, do what you need to do, and then be along your way. There was no humanness to being a boss babe, to being a woman, to being a mom, to being a working mom. Like those are a lot of things to balance at once. And it was just like, nope, shove it down and keep on moving.
Well, and I'll add to that any sort of like marital issues that were had or were discussed were always used like as a form of manipulation or like it was not a safe space to like have problems.
Right.
And it seemed like the founders were over involved in their like core group's lives in terms of like what their marriages ought to look like or be. And I have personally experienced that. And that is like not a healthy work environment or church environment or anything. It's like your marriage somehow being a reflection of your, efficiency in your job or whatever is bogus.
Yeah. And touching on the whole idea of like physically pleasing your husband in order to get what you want or to like make your business work is, I mean, first of all, you're commodifying intimacy, and that's something that the church has done, and that this company is also touting, is this idea that like you just need to please them. They even have like the 3 A's, which are like
acceptance,
affirmation,
and
admiration. Was
admiration.
one of them. Admiration,
admire.
Anyways, it was like the 3 A's that women should do for their husbands to like make them feel good, so that they can like be successful in their business. And like, sure, you should admire, accept, affirm your husband, whatever. But like, are they doing that for you too? And also, why is your business telling you how you should treat your marriage at all?
That actually reminds me of the misogynist pastor episode from season 1. You can check it out. That we discussed where he kind of, I don't remember exactly what he says, but he implies like, you got to keep him happy. Like that is your job. Like his sexual needs are your command or whatever. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah. And in touching on too what you said, Kellyanne, about humanness, this idea that like, oh, you please him and then you can go and do your business, it takes away the humanness of women in recognizing that they also have sexual needs and intimacy needs. It's saying, oh no, you are not woman. You are robot for LulaRich who just needs to make more money and sell more leggings, you know? Like that's the idea. And it's like, well, that's your need. Satisfy your husband's needs. And then you can carry on being this robot.
Being a Barbie doll.
Yeah.
Barbie doll robot.
And another thing with that feels very insidious to me about their messaging around couples in being involved in the company is that then they become wholly dependent upon LulaRich. Like all of their income, all of their livelihood is centered on this company. And like that is very dangerous, but that is, I mean, in some ways, a very strategic thing for LulaRich to do because then people are locked in. People feel less like they can leave. And then you get their money more. You get their money for longer. They're committed and invested because they will literally be on the street without you.
The more products they sell, the more people they recruit. More so, the more people they recruit, the more money is made. And it's just,
Yeah. And so that was one of the big things that they had around women was like, these women weren't actually empowered. They were empowered to make enough money to empower their husbands, essentially.
Yeah, well, and to me, it felt like they were preying on, like, female vulnerabilities for the purpose of, like, pulling them into a scheme and using them for their own profit. So it's like that's not actually empowering.
Yeah, it's not. But another thing that is really big in the way that they talk about women in the company is their image, right? So we already touched on the fact that they had this weight loss surgery almost program. Like, honestly, the way that they talked about it, I would not be surprised if the president of LulaRich, Deanne, gets some sort of financial kickback or commission for referencing women to this weight loss surgery.
Yeah.
She has to.
Yes, it seems like she does because in the docuseries, she goes to Tijuana, Mexico, and she gets this surgery. She loses like 72 pounds and then says that she has already brought, at that time, this was like only a couple months after her surgery, has already brought 18 women down there to get this surgery as well. And then they talk about how like any woman who is like in the inner circle at LulaRich as a retailer gets asked to come do the surgery. And they have like a text message group where they're saying they're taking women down there every week. Weekly, they are taking women down to Mexico to get this surgery. And on top of that, there's a ton of pressure in general to look a certain way. What did that strike in you guys when you saw that?
I mean, to me, it strikes control, essentially. It's like you must conform to what we understand a successful and powerful woman to be and what she ought to look like, and you must conform or get in trouble, essentially. So it wasn't really promoting like individual expression, and even like financially, the one that really disturbed me is the woman who talks about like living paycheck to paycheck because she was expensing so much money toward her appearance and like expensive name brand Louis Vuitton bags and new cars and bigger houses.
$10,000 on a dinner.
Yeah. And like to me, that doesn't feel like letting someone have financial independence over their own business. That feels like manipulating and controlling someone into spending the money the way you want them to.
Yeah.
And also requiring them to continue to be dependent on your company. And so like that was very disturbing to me. And like as a more frugal person who lives conservatively, my husband and I are both like way under our means. And we save a lot and we're preparing for the future a lot. Like living in an environment like that where you feel pressured to not wear or buy or have anything other than like top ridiculously expensive name brand clothes and new Mercedes Benz and 25 500 square foot houses or whatever, or even bigger. That's probably not even that big. That doesn't feel like independence and autonomy and empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that because the kind of question, right, that the doc is trying to answer or alluding to answering is this a cult? And that to me is when that question really starts to come to light fully, right? Is when it's like, you need to look a certain way. Your success will be determined by how you look and appear. And then also back to that humanness side of, if you bring in negative energy or if you are not the brand, you're probably not the right representative for us. And this probably isn't for you. Mm-hmm. And even at one point, it was like, you can fall in line or you can head out. And to me, when there is that level of exclusivity and pressure to like not show up as you, show up in the version of you we want that we think will lead to success, and your success will be determined by whether you show up that way or not, that's when it's like, yeah, we need to start talking about that cult question, because that is very cult-like behavior. And yeah, I think I really have a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to like, well, you will be successful if. Mm-hmm. It's like, actually, I don't know that it is up to you to determine that, especially if we have a wholesale relationship.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, the founders of LulaRich sort of hide this idea of looking a certain way under the guise of, you want to present success so that you get more recruits. And then you will make more money because you're getting these bonus checks that come with every recruit that you bring on. Mm-hmm. And so they're saying, hey, you do this, and you show them, you sell success to them. But that means that you need to spend all of the money that you get from us. And even though, like, people who work within, like, the corporate offices for LulaRich, though, also received pressure to look a certain way. Mm-hmm. For example, there's a designer that they interview in the docuseries who said that she was brought in and told that she was being promoted, but that she needed to be aware that she hadn't worn any LulaRich for 3 days. But they're still going to promote her anyways, but like she needs to watch out for that, essentially. And she's like, what? Like, I don't need to wear LulaRich every day, but that's their expectation. And which also means you need to be buying from us. And you need to be representing us and essentially a walking billboard to sell us to others. And that's, I mean, a whole other level of control. And it is manipulation. And one woman who is interviewed in the docuseries, who was a former seller for them, says that one day she's at a conference, I believe, and looks around and goes, oh my gosh, we all look exactly the same. Mm-hmm. I'm in a cult.
Well, and to like continue along that cult thread, there's also the added element of once people were terminated or people chose to leave LulaRich, they were like internal employees were instructed not to have any contact with them or that they themselves would be terminated.
Yes.
And so that is, I mean, that's telltale cult. Like you're in or you're out kind of thing. And you can't have contact with anybody within the organization if you're not within the organization, and you can't have anybody, you can't be in contact with people outside the organization or who have left, like isolating people essentially from each other. And I don't know, that was really disturbing. Mm-hmm. I think it's a cult.
Kelly's straight up like,
it's a cult. I think
that's it.
Yeah, I think it straight up is. Like, I don't know. You guys can watch it and make your own call, but like to me, it's pretty much sounds like a cult. Mm-hmm.
I know I personally have a hard time calling things cults that are not, like, inherently, I guess, violent, or that are not, like, doing things that are so extreme and harmful that could be, like, prosecuted by law, you know? I think, I don't know, I've noticed a trend where I feel like people are sort of, like, boy who cried cults-ing to an extent, you know?
Cult, this is a cult.
Yeah, I feel like, sometimes I do feel like people are like, everything's a cult. But then I'm also like, there are a lot of things that are kind of cultish.
Yeah.
So I go back and forth, and I'm like, well, what is really the definition of a cult? What does that really mean? And I think that one thing that makes me hesitant to say, like, this is a cult, is that they don't have as much, I guess, like, organization around cult, like essentially like a Bible, you know? Like, they don't seem to have, like, a code. Although they do have a lot of things that they use that are, like, sort of their slogans or their, like, rules, like their 3 A's, and then they had, like, other things that were almost like little metrics that they
Lots
used
of
to, like,
acronyms.
teach people things and to, like, impart their business wisdom,
in
I
some ways
guess.
have like a code of ethics or a code of like
Yeah.
conduct or whatever
Yeah.
in their business. Which it's not necessarily like a Bible or religious document of some
Yeah.
kind, but
I mean, he does, like, the CEO does, like, in a way, during motivational speeches, quote the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, who, like, does quote
He
the Book
does
of
quote
Mormon.
it. And so it does kind of, like, cross that line between motivational and spiritual.
well, and he does compare himself to Joseph Smith.
He does.
You're right.
As if like
So-
they're kind of at the beginning of this sort of movement. They call it a movement.
Mhm, they do call it a
Yeah.
movement.
This is true.
But I mean, I understand where
That
you're
does
coming
get
from.
sketchy.
I understand
It's-
where you're coming from in terms of like everything's a cult these days, but like
gray
this one,
waters.
in my opinion, is actually a cult.
Yeah.
Everything's not a cult, but this is a cult.
Yeah, everything's a cult, but this one is actually a cult. That is
Yeah.
that is my official stance. I will never buy LulaRich products ever.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm out.
Were you ever in?
I've bought LulaRich before from Goodwill.
Yeah.
I've never liked any of the stuff that I bought. I always regretted it.
Uh,
But I've done it,
Yeah.
and I never will again.
I don't know. I just can't get behind the material itself.
It's terrible. It's really terrible.
It's stretchy and, like, kind of itchy,
It's
but like soft at the
polyester.
same time. You're gonna sweat in it.
yeah.
It's just
It's like summer clothing, but like
but like not.
yeah, like the maxi skirt thing. I don't know if anyone's actually worn a maxi skirt, but unless it's made of cotton, those things are just like swamp ass skirts. That's what they should be called.
Oh,
So
I like
hot.
a maxi
They're all
skirt.
like these
I do
terrible,
like a good maxi
But like I'm
skirt.
talking about the maxi skirts that were popular in like 2012.
Oh yeah, I never wore those.
Yeah.
Oh,
those
yeah.
are with like the fold
With
over
the
Yeah.
fold over,
waistband.
oh, that was my shit. And then you pulled your tank top down as far as it would go.
Yeah.
And then you put your belt over the top of
Yes.
it, and you were cute as
That
shit.
was the shit. Yes.
I never did that.
Those were made of the
did
worst
that.
material in the world, and if you actually, and they're of summer garment, but if you actually wear them in summer, you're just like sweat
So
dripping,
hot.
terrible.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I believe it. So then, if LulaRich is a cult, are all MLMs cults?
I mean, I
think,
think it
they
depends.
have the potential. Anything has potential to be a cult, right?
Sure.
Like
yeah.
any belief system, political parties.
Come to the woman being cult.
There's family cults. You
Families.
know, like there's no criteria to me whether a cult has to be a religious
Mm-hmm.
institution, a business, or a family, or you know whatever. I feel like there's
It's a
lots
belief.
of different.
I mean, so to give you guys a definition really quick from Oxford, a cult is a system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object, or a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister, or a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. So I feel like
the thing in this case being the product
LulaRich
or
would
the
fall
business.
more into that third
Yeah.
definition.
Yeah. I watched a doc about a different cult. Because, fun fact about me, I love cults. I could talk about cults and conspiracy theories all day. I think it's fascinating. I think the way the human brain works is fascinating. But one of the telltale signs of a cult is one, that ability to leave of your own free will and not being ostracized from the rest of the community. And two, not being forced into a mold or expected to have specific behaviors or lack of specific behaviors in order to quote unquote fit in to the message. So I think MLMs, I think inherently no are not cults, but they definitely all have potential to be 100%.
Yeah, I would say that way. I mean, I wouldn't look at Young Living and say it's a cult. I would say it's maybe like a more excited craze than I would get on board with.
It's a trend.
Yeah.
Like, I think people are a little bit woo-woo about Beauty Counter in a way that I never will be or whatever. But, like, I guess unless I was actually within the culture, I could never say, you know? Like, I've never experienced anyone, you know, getting crazy deep involved in an MLM to the point that I thought, oh, no, this is a cult.
Yeah. I definitely can see how MLMs, like you said, Kellyanne, might be more inclined to produce cult-like behavior, especially once you get higher up within the ranks of it being like, well, you sort of need to conform to a certain way and you need to assimilate, which, I mean, that happens just in any group that you are in general, right? Like I worked at a production company and I saw the way that everybody dressed around me. I saw the way that my bosses dressed and I thought, I need to dress like that in order to be successful here. And so I'm going to, you know, slightly change the way that I dress so that then I can conform, be accepted, and move up within the ranks. And I think that that happens in any group that you are in. Like that happens when you go to a church and you're like, oh, everyone looks this way at this church. I need to sort of conform and assimilate in order to be accepted. I think that's natural human behavior. But when it comes to something as blatant as LulaRich saying, like, you must do this or you will not get a promotion or you will be, like, totally like not accepted because one of the women talks about how she's getting pressured over and over to do the gastric bypass surgery, and how she finally tells Deanne, hey, I'm not going to do this. And then she gets total cold shoulder from her from then on. She is no longer part of that inner circle because she has chosen to not get weight loss surgery, which has nothing to do with selling leggings. But so to me, that I can see how, you know, knowing human behavior when you're part of a group like an MLM, how like conformity and assimilation can be part of it, but that natural human behavior can be manipulated and preyed upon by people who have bad intentions or who have fallen into some sort of manipulative pattern or have control issues.
Or there's money and power at stake,
Yes. And that's when you see cult start to be part of it. This is not to say that anyone who, you know, is part of an MLM is instantly part of a cult.
And you're probably also still a good person.
Yes.
Like, and you believe in what you're doing, and I think that's great.
Yeah, and can be a great way to make some side money, possibly, if you are able to be successful in it.
Yeah.
But again, like I keep going back to that idea that 70% of people who are part of LulaRich made no money or probably even lost money. There's a diagram that they show in the docuseries that shows the amount of money that women were making off of their bonus checks for recruiting people versus the amount of profit people were making from selling leggings. And the profit margin was in the negative while the bonus checks were like probably 10 or 15 times the amount that the negative was.
Which, in order to be in the red, that means you're selling less than half of the inventory you have every month. Which is like, so if you buy 50 items, you're selling less than 25. Like, items.
All of those clothes are just going to waste.
They're just hanging out in
like,
in your closet, in your garage, wherever, and just not being sold. But you're continuing to buy inventory, so you had to make a monthly purchase of inventory every month. Otherwise, your account would be suspended, which is another issue as far as like businesses go. If we're in a wholesale relationship, that relationship is not terminated based on how much inventory I do or don't buy. I buy inventory when I need it. We're good. You are able to deliver the goods. When I don't need it, I don't buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think too about the amount of waste that is coming from an industry like this where they are requiring their designers to create 100 designs every day. They are putting out new legging patterns all the time, new maxi skirt patterns and dress patterns and all these things. And they're creating so much and saturating the market so much. Like, this is why LulaRich is in every Goodwill, is because people couldn't even buy it fast enough to, like, wear it
Yeah.
before it's just getting donated or winding up just in a landfill.
Right.
And so this is just like a hugely resource intensive like system that they've set up.
Yeah, it's fast fashion, but
Yeah.
like on a mass scale.
Well, more it's fast fashion is mass
Well, I
inherently.
guess fast fashion is all mass, but like, yeah, it's just totally wasteful and with poor quality materials, poor quality prints. It's just like
Really bad.
Yeah. And
Battle
the idea, there's this like part of what made them successful was this idea of like, you don't know what you're going to get. And it's like limited quantities of different patterns that they're making. And so this like exclusivity and like this like, sort of mystery is part of the appeal of it. But that's actually something that I think has become a very wasteful like trend in our Western society. Their sort of exclusivity or like the mystery of it is creating a demand that wasn't actually there. And I think that people have now realized or have started to realize like, oh, I actually don't need this.
Totally.
And so then it winds up in all the Goodwills.
totally.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh. And I even think about just with trends in general, with fashion, people will get swept up in a trend that's actually hideous or unflattering or whatever, and then realize, oh, I hate this. This is not something I actually like. I just liked it because I saw it on so many people. And then things that are like weird trends wind up in the Goodwills or in the landfills.
Well, and I think that applies to other MLMs as well. You know, like just like, oh, you must try these new products that we just got on the line. And people are like, oh,
Yeah.
well, all my friends are buying it, so I guess I have to whatever. And then it turns into like, I don't actually want this.
Yeah, well, I see this particularly. The first example I think of actually is with essential oils. There's this idea that I see among like influencers of like having in the background of your YouTube video your like wall of essential oils, and you have hundreds of bottles of essential oils that are on special shelves that are like beautiful and aesthetic, and like this is part of being a natural like millennial gal. and so it's this idea that like do you really need that many essential oils? Do you really need every single like oil that they offer? Like, how can you even use that many essential oils quick enough for them to still be good?
Totally.
You know? And essential oils also in general are a very resource intensive item that has a lot of issues. But the thing is like this idea that like you need to aspire to a certain look or ideal, and then you wind up over purchasing. And that's something that I could see happening with LulaRich as well, is that you're looking at these leggings all over your Facebook. They were all over my Facebook for a while. And you're looking at these ugly patterns, but you're seeing so many women wear them that they start to look less and less ugly. And then you're like, well, maybe I need this. And then maybe I need 20 pairs. I need to become a retailer for them. You know, like there's a whole sort of spiral with that. And I think that people sort of being influenced to purchase these things just turns into waste because you're being influenced. You aren't actually wanting this.
Yeah, I also think of like, mentioning waste, them talking about, this is what they claim, right? They claim that they only make 3,000 units of each pattern, which like, or SKU, if you will, which is not sustainable at all as a brand or a business. Like, to get a good price break, you really want to order 10,000 units or more per item. And then, it gets better the more you order. It gets like, better margins or whatever. So I'm like, you're telling me you only manufacture 3,000 units per style? That's crazy. Like, that's the kind of thing that makes me think, like, oh yeah, this is homegrown. They do not know what they're doing. And then also the demand on their designers to design 100 patterns a day. Like, that is not realistic. Who's approving those designs? Who's being the colorist? Are they expected to design and be the colorist at the same time? Like, how does that work? So they're literally just pumping out leggings essentially faster than they can sell, right? Because, on average, most employees are in the red, which means they're selling less than 50% of their stock every month.
Yeah.
Which is then just like piling up over time. So crazy shit.
Well, yeah, and then we see later in the documentary that the quality of the leggings deteriorates rapidly to the point that like fabric is tearing like tissue paper, and there's holes in it, and the seams are uneven, and like the cuts are horrible and stuff. And so it seemed
and
like
there's mold.
And mold, water damage, all sorts of issues with the products themselves. And so it seems like they overproduced, had a bunch of stuff sitting in a warehouse and outside. They're like literally outside for days, months, who knows. And then they're delivering faulty product to these retailers who essentially are struggling to even get it returned. And so, the whole...
Well, not just struggling to get it returned. Being told blatantly, well, just mark it down and take the price cut. Just take the loss in profit that you're going to receive for this faulty product that we sent to you, that you actually had no control over.
Right. Very problematic.
That's the thing. This is where I have a very hard time being empathetic for the founders of LulaRich, is that not only are they creating an MLM, which is a questionable business model in the first place, not only are they producing things at a very high and not sustainable rate, not only are they touting messages of female empowerment that are actually lies, and not only are they manipulating women, they're also giving product to their retailers, the people that are making them so much money, and they don't even care when they receive complaints. They aren't empathetic. They aren't giving refunds. They aren't giving them any sort of support when wouldn't part of the appeal of being part of this MLM is that you receive support from a larger entity, right? Like you are independent in your business, but in some ways you are not wholly on your own in doing this because you have the backing of this larger company. And the fact that in this docuseries, the founders hardly are willing to even address the issue of faulty product, and they claim that this was a small issue that people just got too upset about.
Right. They call it a social media thing. They're social media is making this a way bigger deal than it is. And it's not just that they don't care. It's that they're placing the blame back on the retailers and the people who, like you said, are making them millions and billions of dollars, and basically saying, well, you need to stop being negative.
You need to stop being a
toxic
victim.
Attitude in this
We
situation.
don't allow negative talk in LulaRich. And they took down people's comments on social media. They took down people complaining or showing faulty product. And it's just wholly unethical to me.
Yeah. I mean, in business world, 5% faulty product can look like a big... so it might not have been super mass scale. I really don't know. But it is your job as the retailer, or in this case, the wholesaler, to address the issue with the product. If you are not addressing the problem with your product, then it's a huge, huge issue. And as an LLC, you are required to be able to accept returns by law, which is part of one of the reasons they had such a major lawsuit given to them. It is because they were either rejecting returns or not even accepting them at all, which is wild to me.
Yeah. So, all that to say, what are you guys' final thoughts or takeaways about LulaRich? How are we feeling?
I think it's fascinating. I think it's tragic. I mean, these women that are like, I'm going to change my family's life, our financial trajectory. Like, I think that I love that entrepreneurial spirit. I love that determination. I love that women's empowerment. It just got put in the wrong hands. And again, like, part of me is like, oh, I oddly feel empathy for this larger than life woman that clearly has a lot of shut down emotions and sadness, but also like, damn, she's accountable for a lot of pain, and a lot of like families ruined, frankly.
Yeah. Livelihoods.
A lot
ruined.
of livelihoods ruined. And that's a problem. And there needs to be reconciliation for that. But it's also just humans. You know, we've got some good, we've got some bad, where there's a lot of gray in the middle. And I think, yeah, it's an interesting thing to learn and know about, and especially kind of pulling back the veil, not just on this quote unquote trend or company, but potentially other MLMs. It kind of gives you some insight in the structure and potentially even a little bit of the psychology too, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think takeaways. One thing I noticed actually within the MLM structure is that the biggest problem is the growth in recruits. Is that once you reach a certain point, you've saturated the market, and so people at the bottom cease to be profitable. I wonder if it would be possible to run a successful MLM company by setting limits on the number of retailers that can join your business per year. So you essentially
Like a cap.
Right. You grow with the market, and you potentially maybe have a waiting list of people that can onboard, and you allow it to grow based on market needs as opposed to just exponentially bringing in funds through people paying to join your company.
Yeah.
Because I mean and sadly that is the way that they make the money. But like, if you truly have a product that truly can sell and make money, like I can see why the MLM structure seems positive. I mean, essentially you have like, let's say 5,000 investors that essentially make up this company, and everybody in this company is a part owner and has their own autonomy and can sell and whatever. And then when they move on, it opens up a spot for somebody else to come in, maybe. So I guess that's a thought. It's just one final takeaway. Maybe an MLM could work if you did it right.
Whoa, from the MLM hater herself.
And if you did it successfully, I don't know, or did it ethically.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I hate MLMs. So I don't know. I think the appeal of the money that you receive through new recruits is too great for you to not inevitably do it that way.
As like an owner of an MLM.
Which is, it's interesting because like if you're doing a startup, like you're going to really what you would get from an MLM of like recruits is they're serving the role of an investor, really. And so if you're starting a business, you'd be better off either one, getting investors, or two, just like doing like a easy Shopify account and running Instagram ads. You're going to have better margins. You don't have to split your profits with people. It all goes to you. And so I'm just like,
You just can't grow as fast.
you can't. And that's very true. But I think looking at it like business perspective wise, I'm like, I think you would be better off just like doing it homegrown, doing it from a website. If even like Amazon, you can Amazon your product. You literally, you make less margin, but they'll house it and ship it for you.
I mean, I think maybe like it's easier to be successful that way if you don't, or if you do care about the ethics of running a business. Right. However, I do think an MLM, aka a pyramid scheme, is the most effective way to make a ton of money.
I want to clarify, though, that MLM and pyramid scheme are not interchangeable terms.
They're not, but they're very similar.
They are very similar, and I would argue that there's a lot of overlap, and many that are pyramid schemes parading as MLMs.
Totally. But, that's a discussion for another day. you know, you guys can watch the doc series and decide, make your own.
Well, speaking of,
conclusions.
would you guys recommend this docuseries?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Definitely. Yeah. Especially if you have feelings about MLMs, good or bad. If you're in one, if you are tired of people reaching you out to you on Facebook about them, if you, I don't know, have any feelings at all or are curious or like LulaRich or hate LulaRich, like I'd love to know.
Yeah.
But this it's fascinating to like look into the human psychology of something like that and look at the people who actually made it happen. And
Yeah. And I mean, the founders themselves are just fascinating people.
Yeah,
They are.
So it's very interesting to just hear from them. I feel like a reality show about them and their family, their like 14 kids, would
Oh
be
my gosh.
a hit.
Way more interesting than the Duggars. Sorry, but yeah.
Yeah. But
so woman being improved on my end.
nice. Yeah. I mean, I would recommend watching it too. I think it's fascinating. And it's something, I think some people are wholly like not in the know about MLMs at all. And then some people have had like more experience with MLMs than they would like to have even had. So I think across the spectrum, it gives a lot of good looks at what an MLM even is. And then also like what is the power that can be abused. And I think could be helpful to people in maybe being a bit more wary when it comes to dealing with an MLM. And recognizing sort of all that goes on. And just, I mean, I think that like consumer awareness in general is something that we need more of. So I think it's great in spreading that a bit more. But all that to say, that's LulaRich, people. You can be LulaRich, and then you'll become Lula famous, and your husband will be a Lula bro. And you'll be a Lula family.
But the odds are actually that you'll just be Lula poor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Lots of Lulu poor.
Lula
and
bankrupt.
Lulu debt.
And Lula losing all your friends and family.
So sad.
Losing everything.
Lula losing.
Lulu
Yes. Loser. That's a SpongeBob reference. Anyways, so that is the end of our discussion on LulaRich. What did you guys think of LulaRich, lovely woman beings? We would love to hear your perspective on it. Are you part of an MLM? Have you ever been part of an MLM? Have you been subject to a pyramid scheme or a Ponzi scheme? We want to know. And we want to hear about that from you on our social media. We are on Instagram at Woman Being Podcast. We have our website, womanbeingcommunity.com, where you can access all of our content, which is also available across podcast platforms and on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Amazon. We're on Spotify. We're on Stitcher. And everything else in between. I already said YouTube.
Oh, sorry.
We are on YouTube twice.
Also, and the same as what
And
we said
YouTube
before.
and also YouTube.
Yes.
So there you go. And that's all we have for you today. We will talk to you lovely people next Tuesday. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.